Anyway, I'm firing the SOS flare.
Oh, you're already out there?
Yeah.
Okay, let me answer an SOS flare.
SOS. Somebody help me.
Monster Hunter World is the most fun I had with a game since Skyrim came out, both in 2011 and 2016. Here's my review. I think the general idea of Monster Hunter can be summed up by comedian Bill Burr.
Like anytime the deer population gets out of control, some dude would literally get on TV and be like, all right, the deer population is up to about 1800. Realistically, we need to get that number down to about 5, 6 of them, all right? So starting them off, you got a gun, fucking shoot one in the face.
Seriously, there's never been a reason for why the player had to hunt these creatures in the series besides general survival purposes. In World, they decided to change things by giving your character a reason for fighting. In this game, you're part of a research commission trying to figure out why elder dragons are migrating in mass to the mysterious island. In particular, one giant dragon, but elder dragons in general. Occasionally, the characters will remind you that the goal is to study these creatures, but most of the time it kind of evolves to the Japanese equivalent of Jimbo and Ned from South Park. It's not a slight against the story or the game as a whole. It's just that the contrast between the stated goal and what's actually happening, at least to me, seems kind of funny. And characters aren't that interesting either. I mean, except the masculine chef. And the handler kind of have some personality, but it's pretty generic also. As a result, I feel that the story and cutscenes are primarily there just to introduce monsters and game mechanics to you. Monster Hunter is definitely a good looking game, although I wouldn't necessarily say is groundbreaking. At the same time, it's definitely come a long way from the Free Unite days. Every stage is thematically different, leading to different colors and landscape and different creatures to find. For example, Core High Ground being my favorite because it kind of just seems like a fancy RPG most of the time. At the same time, none of the stages look like they're out of place or doesn't fit with the other areas. They all seem well connected. And like any competently made game, the focus is the most interesting visually. And obviously in this game I'm talking about Monster Hunter, all the monsters in Monster Hunter. One of the things I always appreciate about Monster Hunter is that the player can assess the strengths, weaknesses, and the various states of the monsters visually. Although the game does make it a lot easier now than, say, 3D Unite once again. For example, looking at the Audinoff, we can tell that he's going to rely primarily on his jaw to attack people. Whereas if we were looking at the Great Jagras, based on his inflated torso, clearly he's going to attack us mostly with his body. Weapons, on the other hand, I don't think are that cool or interesting, because most of the time it's just a modified version of the bone or a weapon with a pelt of a monster you killed or wrapped around him. And then when you get to late game, that's when you start getting visually interesting monsters. Not monsters, but weapons. You also get monsters. But even then, a lot of weapons are kind of weird. Armor, on the other hand, I'm willing to say is more subjective because I've only played the male armor and most of it's kind of bulky, which I don't like, but it might be better for female armor. The same can be said about music. I don't really like or recall most of the music in the game, despite putting, at this current moment, 90 hours into the game. But at the very least, the sound effects are nice. Monster Hunter has a simple gameplay loop. You fight monsters in order to make equipment out of their body so that you can fight stronger monsters and then proceed to make more equipment out of their body. And the gameplay loop is kind of reminiscent of MMOs minus the dungeons and lesser enemies. I was playing with my brother, and this is a spoiler alert, when he pointed out the hubris of the researchers in thinking they could stop the Zoro Magros, which for all intents and purposes is just a moving mountain with wooden structures. Then we came to a realization that Capcom has a repeating motif with humans trying to stop some gigantic and usually cataclysmic monster. Like in Lost Planet, all the warring factions come together in order to stop the world from ending. Or in... Right. The point is that Capcom tend to excel when the combat is on a singular enemy. As much as game developers say they want to achieve this, I think singular large monster format tend to generate holy shit or naturally produce iconic moments.
He's taking. There goes the trap again.
God!
No!
Oh, we got one more time. We got one more time, Phoenix. Get him on the shock trap. Go, 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 go!
Yes!
Yes! Oh my god! Sour nuts! Oh my god, thank you. Thank you, fucking small cat. Oh my god.
Despite some monsters having similar designs, each one has a different gimmick one has to keep in mind. Furthermore, there's 13 different weapons in the game, which they function more like classes than weapons, as they then tend to cater to a certain playstyle and rely on different skills to do well with. For example, even though the light bow gun and the heavy bow gun, which you would think are practically the same thing, they're pretty different. The light gun has obviously less damage, but it also generally relies on using traps and doing hit and run tactics, while the heavy bow gun, as it's more damaging, it's just you just stand there and then barrage the enemy with bullets. And so as a result, fighting a monster with one weapon or another might make it easier or harder depending on which one you use. But my issue with combat in the game is that ranged weapons, especially in the early game, just feels awful to use. It doesn't have the same satisfying landing like using a great sword or using a charged blade or just slapping someone with a hunting horn. Monster Hunter is shaping up to be probably my favorite game of the year, even this early on. I would even say it's a contender for Game of the Year. However, at the same time, I wouldn't say it's a perfect game. For example, you can't play the story missions, which is necessary to encounter most of the monsters in the game, with others unless those players already seen the cutscenes, or you invite them after the cutscene. But if you're going to do that, that means if you want to progress through the story at the same time with friends, you have to repeat the process 3 more times. Another example, the character animations are clearly for the Japanese audio, so the characters look goofy at times when the English dubbing finished way before the lip movements of the characters. I also wouldn't recommend this game to everyone despite how welcoming it is to people who've never played Monster Hunter before. Because it's like Shadow of the Colossus, but with dragons. As in the good analogy. It's like Skyrim with guns. Nope, I don't like that either. It's like Soulsborne, or Dark Souls in Bloodborne. I would say it's more like Bloodborne than Dark Souls, considering the monster in Monster Hunter has faster gameplay and more dynamic, unique weapon move lists. 2 things about that though. First, I'm not saying Monster Hunter is hard. It's as difficult as any other action game. Nor would I even say Souls games are hard, but that's a different discussion for a different time. Second, I'm not calling Monster Hunter a Souls clone, especially since the series existed before Demon Souls, which, if no one knows, came out before Dark Souls. Monster Hunter reminds me of Soulsborne because it features the same grounded combat of Bloodborne, and both games favor studying your opponent's attack string before being offensive. However, Monster Hunter is more forgiving overall, at least until you get to the end game when monsters can just easily one-shot you. Another thing they both have in common is that there's not that much story being featured, although once again, Monster Hunter has more story. And as I mentioned earlier, this game is primarily a grindy game, and if you can look past that, then by all means, get the game immediately, in any way possible. If not, I would say watch another review if you haven't already, because what do I know, I'm just a small YouTuber. Anyway, that's the end of my review. If you've got to the end of this, thanks for watching, and if there's anything you would like to ask me about, or if there's any suggestions you can make on what I'm doing, then let me know. So it'll help me improve.